Picture this: a quiet Wednesday at an immigration office in Dallas, Texas. The kind of place where drama usually means someone forgot to bring the right paperwork. Fluorescent lights buzzing, security guards checking IDs, detainees waiting in plastic chairs, everyone just trying to get through the day. Then, bang. Out of nowhere, bullets rip through the air, panic erupts, people scatter, 2 detainees are killed, another is wounded, and suddenly the dull monotony of bureaucracy has been replaced by raw chaos. The attacker wasn't inside the building. He was perched on the roof of a nearby structure, sniper style, aiming directly at the Immigration and Customs Enforcement ICE field office. According to officials at the Department of Homeland Security, the gunman opened fire indiscriminately before ultimately turning the weapon on himself. His rampage ended with his own self-inflicted gunshot wound, but not before leaving 2 people dead, 1 injured, and countless more traumatized. And here's where it gets even more bizarre. This wasn't just some random guy firing off rounds in a fit of rage. The FBI revealed that several of his bullets were literally inscribed with words. One casing in particular was scrawled with anti-ICE. Imagine that. Bullets with a manifesto. Subtle? Not exactly. More like a neon sign saying this was political. Audience, let me ask you, what's more chilling to you? The fact that a sniper managed to target a federal facility in broad daylight, or the fact that he deliberately labeled his ammo to make a statement? And let's be honest, do you think labeling bullets changes anything? Or is it just one more way for extremists to turn violence into propaganda? Drop your thoughts below because this is a debate worth having. Now, here's the twist. ICE facilities are already controversial symbolic battlegrounds in America's immigration wars. To some, they represent law and order. To others, they symbolize oppression and cruelty. So when a sniper targets one, it doesn't just make headlines. It ignites a firestorm of questions about politics, anger, and security. And speaking of security, Fact 2 takes us straight to the question on everyone's mind. How in the world does a sniper, yes, a full-blown rooftop shooter, set up across from a federal immigration facility, aim his weapon, and unload bullets into the building without anyone noticing until it's too late? This isn't a hidden cabin in the woods. This is Dallas, Texas, a major city where ICE offices aren't exactly low-profile targets. They're supposed to be among the most secure federal spaces around, guarded like Fort Knox. Yet somehow, a guy with a rifle had the time, the space, and the nerve to climb up, settle in, and unleash chaos. That's not just shocking, that's embarrassing. Think about it. These are facilities that handle some of the most politically sensitive cases in America. You'd expect layers of security, metal detectors, guards, surveillance cameras on every corner, maybe even reinforced glass. And yet this sniper turned their secure facility into a shooting gallery. It raises a brutal question. Are ICE facilities truly prepared for the reality of being such polarizing high-risk places? Or are they just counting on the idea that nobody would dare attack them? Audience, let me throw this at you. Do you feel safer knowing there are cameras on every corner? Or does this kind of event prove that surveillance means nothing if nobody's paying attention? Would you trust these so-called secure facilities to protect you in an emergency? Or do you think it's just security theater, rules, guards, and checkpoints that look good on paper but collapse the second someone actually tests them? And here's the kicker. This wasn't the first time federal facilities have been targeted. Protests, break-ins, and attacks have hit ICE offices before. But a sniper attack? That's a new escalation. A glaring failure that shows attackers aren't just slipping through the cracks, they're exploiting giant holes in the system. If you're sitting in a detention cell or working behind a desk, you don't expect your biggest threat to be raining down from the rooftop across the street. Which leads us into Fact 3, because once investigators started piecing together the sniper's motives, they realized this wasn't just an act of random violence. It was laced with politics, slogans, and symbolism. And the bullets themselves told the story.
Now, here's where the story takes a chilling turn from violent to symbolic. Investigators didn't just find spent shell casings around the sniper's perch. They found unspent bullets that carried literal handwritten messages. One of them was inscribed with the words, anti-ICE. Let that sink in for a second. This wasn't just a man with a rifle. This was a man turning his weapon into a billboard. Every bullet wasn't just ammunition, it was propaganda. Think about how deliberate that is. Writing on bullets isn't something you do in the middle of the chaos. It's premeditation. It's the shooter saying, I want my motives to be crystal clear. No mystery, no ambiguity. He was targeting ICE, the agency at the center of America's immigration battles. The agency critics accuse of tearing families apart and enforcing some of the harshest deportation policies. This was a sniper trying to send a message written in blood and brass. Audience check-in. What do you think about this? Does writing slogans on bullets make the act any louder than the violence itself? Or does it just show how desperate extremists are to turn personal rage into political theater? Would you call this terrorism, activism gone wrong, or simply madness? Drop your answers. I want to know where you draw the line. Now, here's where the FBI made it official. Special Agent Joe Rothrock announced that the early evidence pointed to the shooter being directly motivated by hostility toward ICE. And then FBI Director Kash Patel doubled down, releasing a photo of 5 unspent bullets on social media, each marked with phrases attacking ICE. Patel didn't mince words either, calling the whole thing despicable, politically motivated attacks against law enforcement. This raises another uncomfortable question. When political anger crosses into violence, does it help the cause it claims to support, or does it destroy it? For critics of ICE, this shooting doesn't spark sympathy, it sparks backlash. It makes every peaceful protester look suspicious by association. And that's the real danger of turning bullets into slogans. You don't just kill people, you kill the credibility of your cause. And speaking of ICE as a target, Fact 4 digs deeper into why this agency, more than almost any other, keeps ending up in the crosshairs of America's political rage. Let's get real for a moment. If there's any federal agency that lives permanently in the spotlight and under fire, it's ICE. Immigration and Customs Enforcement is like that one kid in school who's constantly in detention, except instead of being scolded by teachers, it's being blasted on cable news, picketed by activists, and occasionally targeted by violent extremists. And why? Because ICE has become the face of America's most heated, emotional, and divisive issue: immigration. To supporters, ICE is the line of defense keeping the border secure, enforcing the laws, and upholding sovereignty. They're the protectors who stop chaos from spilling in. But to critics, ICE isn't about security, it's about fear. It's raids in neighborhoods at dawn, families split apart, detention centers overcrowded, and deportations that leave children crying on live TV. That's why ICE has become more than an agency. It's a symbol. And in today's political climate, symbols get targeted. Now remember, this sniper didn't hit a post office, he didn't hit the DMV, he didn't hit some random government warehouse. He zeroed in on ICE, the one acronym guaranteed to spark debate at Thanksgiving dinners and protests outside courthouses. That's not coincidence, that's calculation. Audience check-in, where do you stand on this? Do you see ICE as a necessary evil, an outright villain, or just a government agency caught in the middle of messy politics? And let's go deeper. Do you think targeting ICE with violence makes the system change, or does it just make the agency double down even harder? Let me know in the comments, because this is one of those questions where everyone's perspective is shaped by personal experience. Here's the uncomfortable truth. ICE has been attacked before. Field offices vandalized, windows smashed, employees threatened. In 2019, there was even a firebombing attempt at an ICE detention center in Tacoma, Washington. And while most of these were fringe attacks, they point to a bigger pattern. When political rage hits boiling point, ICE is always one of the first targets. But here's the kicker. Every attack like this one doesn't just hurt ICE, it strengthens its defenders. Violent acts give politicians ammunition, pun very much intended, to argue that the agency isn't just controversial, it's under siege. And once you frame ICE as under attack, calls for reform or abolition get drowned out by calls for protection. Which takes us straight to fact 5. Because while ICE sits at the center of this firestorm, what happened in Dallas is also part of a bigger trend, America's rising wave of politically motivated violence. And trust me, this is a trend that should scare all of us.
Here's the uncomfortable truth. What happened in Dallas wasn't just an isolated outburst. It's part of a growing pattern in America, where political anger doesn't just stop at protests, hashtags, or strongly worded tweets. it spills over into outright violence. And if you've been paying attention the past few years, you'll know that this isn't a one-off. It's becoming a dangerous trend. From school board meetings to state capitals, from street protests to federal buildings, the U.S. has been dealing with a steady escalation of rage turning into real-world attacks. The ICE sniper incident is just the latest entry in a long, ugly list that includes bomb threats, mass shootings tied to ideology, and even attempts to assassinate politicians. America's political divides aren't just arguments anymore, they're bleeding into actual gunfire. Now here's where it gets really concerning. Violence like this doesn't just kill people. It poisons the political debate. When someone opens fire in the name of an ideology, it doesn't strengthen their cause, it turns it radioactive. Even people who might have sympathized with the message step back because the method is indefensible. Imagine trying to talk about immigration reform the week after a sniper attacks ICE. Suddenly, the whole conversation is hijacked by the violence. Audience check-in. Do you think political violence ever achieves its goals, or does it always backfire? Would you say it scares leaders into change, or does it just harden their resolve and make everything worse? Be honest, I want to see where you stand on this. Here's the kicker. The Dallas shooter inscribed his bullets with anti-ICE slogans, trying to send a message. But the only message people remember now is the violence, the lives lost, the fear. His slogans don't trend on Twitter. His ideology doesn't get airtime. What gets remembered is another headline about bloodshed in America. And that's the real tragedy, not just the deaths, but the way violence silences the very conversations it's supposed to amplify. And speaking of conversations, let's slide into fact 6, because this sniper's attack didn't just raise questions about political violence in general, it also forced people to ask, is America's immigration debate fueling extremism in ways no one's prepared for? Let's be brutally honest here. Immigration isn't just a policy debate in America, it's a lightning rod. Every time it comes up, tempers flare, headlines explode, and social media practically sets itself on fire. And because ICE sits right at the heart of this storm, it has become a natural target for extremists who see it as the physical embodiment of everything they hate about U.S. immigration policy. Here's the thing, immigration touches nerves on all sides. For some, it's about law, order, and sovereignty. For others, it's about human rights, compassion, and justice. And when you have an issue framed in such absolute terms, extremists see it as fertile ground. They don't want nuance, they don't want debate, they want action, loud, violent, headline-grabbing action. That's how you end up with a sniper carving anti-ICE onto bullets. It's not a rational act, it's rage weaponized. But let's dig deeper. Immigration debates in the U.S. aren't just about policies, they're about identity. Who belongs, who doesn't, who gets to call America home? That's emotional dynamite. And extremists feed on emotion. When rhetoric ramps up, politicians calling for mass deportations, activists calling ICE a terrorist agency, those words don't just stay in speeches. They echo in the minds of unstable individuals, sometimes pushing them to take violent action. Audience check-in. Do you think heated rhetoric from politicians and media personalities contributes to this kind of extremism? Or do you think people like the Dallas sniper are ticking bombs who would have exploded no matter what? Where's the line between free speech and fueling violence? Drop your take, because this is one of those questions with no easy answer. And here's the kicker. Violence like this doesn't make immigration debates better, it makes them worse. Instead of talking about reform, solutions, or compromise, everyone gets pulled into the blame game. Politicians point fingers, activists get silenced, and ordinary families caught in the middle, the ones who actually need answers, are left even more vulnerable. Which brings us to fact 7, because beyond immigration and politics, there's another chilling layer here. This wasn't just about one angry man with a rifle. It was about how America's obsession with guns keeps turning political disputes into shooting galleries.
Let's state the obvious. Only in America does a political grievance so often come packaged with an AR-15, high-caliber rounds, and a tragic headline. The Dallas ICE sniper didn't just have anger. He had the firepower to turn that anger into carnage. And here's the uncomfortable reality. That's not unusual here. Guns in America aren't just tools for hunting or self-defense, they're amplifiers of rage. They take a political argument and turn it into a massacre in seconds. Now think about this. The sniper in Dallas wasn't inside the facility. He didn't sneak through a checkpoint or outwit security guards. He climbed onto a rooftop across the street, rifle in hand, and turned a government office into his personal shooting gallery. That's how easy it was. And that's how easy it is for anyone with access to firearms to escalate from angry citizen to deadly extremist. Audience check-in. What do you think the bigger problem is? America's political divides or the sheer ease with which those divides can be armed? Do you think reducing access to weapons would stop attacks like this, or would extremists just find another way? Be real. I want to hear your perspective because this is where the debate always gets heated. Here's the kicker. Every time an act of violence like this happens, the conversation splits into predictable camps. One side says we need stricter gun control now. The other side says the problem isn't the gun, it's the person. Meanwhile, the rest of the world looks at America and wonders how a country with more security cameras than Starbucks still can't stop a man with a rifle from wreaking havoc on a federal building. And let's not forget, when bullets have political slogans carved into them, this isn't just a gun issue, it's a messaging issue. Guns in America don't just kill, they speak. They send statements, ignite debates, and inflame divisions. It's violence as performance art, with the rest of the nation forced to watch. And speaking of the nation being forced to watch, Fact 8 dives into the aftermath, because what happens after a tragedy like this isn't just law enforcement cleaning up the scene, it's the media circus, the political spin, and the battle over what this attack really means. Here's the part where tragedy meets primetime television, because the minute the Dallas ICE sniper story broke, it wasn't just a crime scene, it was content. News outlets scrambled to frame the narrative, politicians rushed to grab their talking points, and social media turned into a battlefield of hot takes faster than you can say breaking news. On one side, conservative voices wasted no time calling this a war on law enforcement. They painted ICE as the victim of radical anti-government extremism, insisting that this was proof the agency needs more funding, more protection, and fewer critics. On the other side, progressives were quick to point out the irony that while the attack was indefensible, it was born from real anger about ICE policies that had been controversial for years. Both sides agreed the violence was horrific, but the blame game? That part was instant and fierce. And then there's the media itself. Every outlet from CNN to Fox spun the story in their own unique flavor. Was it terrorism? Was it a politically motivated assassination attempt? Or was it just another chapter in America's endless gun violence epidemic? Depends on which channel you watched. Meanwhile, the victims, the detainees who were killed and wounded, risked being lost in the shuffle, overshadowed by the circus of commentary. Audience check-in. What frustrates you more, the violence itself or the way it gets twisted into a political tug-of-war within hours? Do you think the media helps us understand these tragedies, or does it just fuel division for ratings? Drop your thoughts below because I know this one's going to split opinions. Here's the kicker. In the end, the media and political spin don't just shape how people see the attack, they shape what happens next. Calls for more security, calls for policy reform, calls for crackdowns on radical rhetoric. In other words, the story of the Dallas sniper isn't just about the shooter, it's about how America chooses to react and who gets to control the narrative. And that leads us straight into Fact 9, because while politicians and media figures were busy spinning, federal agencies were already taking a hard look at what this attack revealed about vulnerabilities in their own system.
When bullets start flying at a federal immigration facility, you better believe Washington takes notice. Within hours of the Dallas sniper attack, the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, and the FBI weren't just investigating the crime scene, they were scrambling to address the elephant in the room. How did this happen, and how do we stop it from happening again? Federal fallout after an incident like this usually follows a familiar script. Step 1, lock down every ICE facility in the region like it's the Pentagon. Step 2, issue public statements condemning the violence while assuring the public that everything is under control. Step 3, quietly launch internal reviews of security protocols that were clearly not strong enough to stop a sniper from setting up shop across the street. But here's the kicker. These facilities are already supposed to be high security. So if a guy with the rifle can pick off detainees from a rooftop, what does that say about the federal government's preparedness? It screams vulnerability. And in an era when ICE facilities have become magnets for both protest and rage, that's not just a problem, it's a ticking time bomb. Audience check-in. Do you think the federal government will actually learn from this and improve security, or will it just throw out the usual press releases until the next tragedy happens? Be honest. Do you trust DHS and ICE to adapt, or are these agencies too big and too political to change? Now, here's where the ripple effect kicks in. Incidents like this don't just prompt security reviews, they spark funding battles. Expect lawmakers to push for more money for ICE security, more surveillance, more barriers. But also expect pushback from critics who argue that militarizing these facilities won't solve the deeper issues that make them targets in the first place. It's a vicious cycle. Violence, funding, controversy, more tension. And that takes us into fact 10, the final piece of this puzzle. Because beyond the bullets, the politics, and the fallout, the real question remains. What does this attack tell us about where America is headed, and how do we stop this cycle before it spirals even further out of control? At the end of the day, the Dallas ICE sniper attack isn't just about one shooter, one building, or one agency. It's a mirror reflecting back the cracks in America's foundation, where politics, rage, and easy access to weapons collide in ways that leave innocent people dead. This wasn't just a tragedy for the victims and their families. It was another chapter in America's never-ending story of how division and violence keep feeding off each other like fire and gasoline. Think about it. A man so enraged by immigration policy that he turned bullets into political statements. An agency so controversial that it has become a permanent lightning rod for anger. A country so polarized that even acts of violence don't unite people in grief, they just divide them further. And through it all, we're left asking the same haunting questions. How did we get here, and how do we stop this cycle? Audience check-in. If you had the power to make one change, just one, to prevent tragedies like this, what would it be? Stricter gun laws, more secure federal facilities, cooler heads in political debates, or maybe, just maybe, a little less division in how we talk to one another? I want to hear your ideas, because let's face it, solutions can't come from the top down if we're not even talking about them at the ground level. Here's the reality check. America is at a crossroads. The Dallas sniper attack shows us that political anger isn't staying on Twitter anymore. It's bleeding into real life with deadly consequences. And unless the cycle breaks, unless we find a way to have hard conversations without bullets, we're going to see more headlines like this one. And that's not just a Dallas problem. That's an American problem. And with that, let's pull it all together, because my final analysis might sting a little, but it's exactly the conversation we need to have.
So here we are, after walking through the sniper's rooftop perch, ICE's role in America's political wars, the chilling slogans scratched onto bullets, the security failures, the media circus, and the bigger picture of political violence. And if there's one takeaway from the Dallas ICE tragedy, it's this. America's debates aren't just heated anymore. They're combustible. And when anger collides with a rifle, the fallout isn't just local. It's national, it's cultural, it's generational. Here's my analysis. Violence like this never wins, not in the long run. Sure, it makes headlines, it rattles nerves, it sparks conversations, but it doesn't solve anything. If anything, it hardens divides. It turns causes into caricatures, victims into hashtags, and politics into a never-ending blame game. The shooter wanted to send a message, but what he really did was drown his own cause in blood. That's the ultimate irony of extremism. It silences itself. Now, here's where I want you, the audience, to weigh in. Because this isn't just about one shooter in Dallas. It's about all of us. Do you think America can break the cycle of anger and violence, or are we destined to keep repeating the same headlines with different names and places? What's your honest take? Are we failing at addressing the root causes, or are we just too divided to even agree on what those root causes are? And here's my challenge to you. Let's not let this conversation end here. Drop your ideas, your solutions, your frustrations in the comments. I read them, other people read them, and sometimes those conversations spark something bigger than any one video. Now, if you found this breakdown sharp, insightful, or even just a little more entertaining than your average news clip, do me a favor, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs to understand what's really happening in America right now. And hey, if you've got your own story about immigration, law enforcement, or political division, tell it. This channel isn't just about reporting the news, it's about building a community that talks about it. Because at the end of the day, we don't stop tragedies like the Dallas ICE sniper with silence. We stop them by talking, by debating, by challenging each other, without bullets, without blood, and without turning our anger into violence. That's where real change starts. So at Global Pulse News family, what's next? The comment section is yours.